Okay. Recording is happening.
I see it. Well, shall I kick it off here?
You bet.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I don't see everybody's faces, but I see names coming on. Some I know and some I don't. I'm Rita Shuford, and I live in Hawaii, and have been working with the principles for 40-some years, and had the good fortune to meet Sydney Banks when I was very young, and knew as soon as I heard him the first time that I had found the missing link, which I was seeking to find. And so I've been a student of these principles for 40-some years and continue. And the beauty of it is that there's no end to the waking up and learning and growing and finding our true nature, our true self. And so this is kind of how this webinar came about, which I'm very grateful to Dicken to be open to doing together, because I thought of him. And I'm a licensed psychologist in Hawaii and currently have to get continuing education credits. So this is new in Hawaii, actually. And so I had decided to attend a conference here in Hawaii by the Psychological Association to earn continuing ed credits. And a few of the workshops sounded kind of interesting. So I thought, okay, let me see what people are saying and doing. And what I was struck by after spending 2.5 days was that every one of the workshops that I attended, somewhere in the conversation, people started talking about mindfulness and how the fact that they were using it in their practices somehow, and for all kinds of issues. And as I'm listening, what I'm hearing is that mindfulness is being discussed as practices and techniques and meditation, and I'm just listening. And but as I'm sitting there, I keep, especially as I went to all of these different ones, I thought, mindfulness to me is natural and so much more simple than what I was hearing shared. And when I say that, I don't mean right or wrong, or people are really coming to realize there's something within the mind that if we can help people reconnect or get in tune with that it can help with any anxiety, depression, trauma, everything that's being dealt with in clinical practice and beyond. And so after the conference, I think it was probably the next morning or soon after, I said, I know, Dicken and I have known each other for years, been good friends and colleagues, and I know that Dicken has had quite a background in mindfulness history and writings and involvement before coming across the principles. And I thought, so I reached out to him. I said, what do you think about doing a class or something on natural mindfulness, something that would help direct people to what's there before we think we have to have a technique. And really, I mean, it's like I see people on this, they're at the doorway and they're even getting closer. I watched last week, was a webinar that was done here called Self-Compassion for Parents. And in essence, what it was a beautiful woman from Boston. Her great feeling, talked about how she's using mindfulness in her work, and especially with parents, and when they are freaking out, which happens with parents at times, and just all the stress and pressures, and realize that, number one, they couldn't sit for an hour, they couldn't necessarily close their eyes, they couldn't do things that were maybe normal, and Dicken can speak more to this, but normal practices and techniques. And so she came up with these very 2-minute mindfulness things. So, that you can be walking, your eyes can be closed, but it's still something that they have to do, right? And even though it's only 2 minutes now, and I thought it's even closer. Mindfulness is a consciousness that we're born into, that we are, and that we're born into, and that we will always be. And the last night I was thinking, it was like the intellect is the only way that we think we have to do something to get there. And again, not right or wrong, but it's a misuse of thought, you might say, that the natural state of our being, and we could call that spiritual or formless, is an intelligent consciousness that is a thought away, is a thought away. And every one of us are going to get lost, even when we have some insight and understanding. But the lostness is like my experience is, I can't really get lost because I'm on a tether of understanding. I have some insight that I can't go anywhere other than in my own mind, really. And I do, right? But then my feeling, that's how it works for me, gets my attention. So that the freaking out, you might say, is a road that doesn't go very far, because I'm tethered. This feeling isn't right. And that's that moment. Now I'm heading home, or I'm home, as I'm stepping back from the way I'm thinking, what's on my mind, the way I'm processing, as people say, whatever's going on in my life, or not going on in my life that I think should be going on in my life. So this natural space within us that is home is a consciousness before and after we come into this life. And we could call it wisdom. We have different names. Names can't hold the truth, but they point to the truth. And there's a feeling, there's a feeling when we come home to that. And we can call it mindfulness, because in my experience now, my mind is quieter, I have more clarity, I'm present, I'm open, and things look very simple, right? like I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I said my criteria these days is I know or I don't know for whatever is going on in my life or needs to be handled or whatever, right? And I said, there's a lot more on the I don't know side, right? Than there is on the I know side. And yet the clarity of what I know sustains me, okay, and keeps me grounded, in life, uh, with a feeling of more peace and well-being without trying to do anything, right? And knowing that whatever I do need uh, insight or clarity for, if it's not here in this moment, no worries, no worries. I heard a few years ago, I listened, to Sid. Sid is my teacher, my mentor, right? So I listen to him regularly. I read his books. That's my main source, okay? And I was listening to one of his talks, which I'd heard many times, but this time I heard, and this is the beauty of truth, is, we keep hearing deeper and deeper as our mind is open to that, which it becomes natural, because the goodies are there, right? But what I heard, because I was one of those people, I wanted to know. So that definitely kept me from being very mindful in certain ways, right? So I heard him say, the unknown is spiritual. And I went, well, that makes sense. It just hasn't been formed yet, right? And there's nothing to do to get there. It's a consciousness that's incubating to give us whatever it is we need, so to speak. And these are just my way of saying it. But it's to live with less on our mind is how we are built. To be present and in the flow of the energy of life is how we're built naturally. And to realize we're out of sync with that is the knowledge of our soul. We cannot not know that, but we can be out of tune with it or touch with it or awake to it, so to speak. And so that's why I wanted to do this webinar and do it with Dicken, who I love dearly and have enjoyed having friendship through the years and watching each other grow. Yeah. Because again, I've said it from the beginning, to me, one of the most beautiful things of these principles and this truth, which the principles help us see, okay, is that there's no end. So I always feel like I'm just beginning. And the beauty is it just gets better and better because I can live with less and less on my mind just because it doesn't make common sense for it to be on my mind until it needs to be on my mind, right? In a way, when we see things with clarity, there's for lack of a better word, the quality of our feeling is good. It's like we say aha, or oh yeah, that's it. We call it gut intuition, many different terms. But there's a feeling within us, a quality of feeling that mindfulness is the home to, so to speak. I just love that we are innately, naturally, spiritually whole and cannot ever not be that. And we have this gift of thought that allows us to believe that we're not that. And we all have that at times. Yeah, we all have it at times. So insecurity of thought, which is the only way we can have insecurity, is via thought, is the illusion. And we're meant to realize that more and more, little by little, sometimes in big chunks. Yeah. But isn't it fabulous that we're just built to live in a place of peace and love and clarity, wisdom, no matter what, just no matter what. That's just the best. And being in that space automatically brings us into the moment of whatever our life is. And that mindful space is filled with knowledge and simplicity, clarity, and just a beautiful feeling within. No matter what. Someone's off of mute.
Oh, sorry, Rita. Hold on a second. I went to mute all and it got you too. Can you unmute yourself there, Rita?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So how's this coming through? It's such an organic process to me. So organic, so natural. Right? So simple. That's part of what boggles the personal or human mind. It's the simplicity. Me too, at times. Yeah, me too. But I just, coming back around, it's like people are getting so, it's like, I will say to my clients, it's like believing something, to have a belief in the possibility of mindfulness or peace of mind or being present or whatever, to have a belief that it's possible and that it's possible within ourselves gets us to the doorway. And then there's that falling into, or that finding our way to the experience of it, which is a moment away, a thought away, a doing nothing away. Sid used to say, point yourself in the right direction and do nothing. And we're like, what? But that was what he was trying to help us see. There's nothing to do, just be. And recently that is really, I always loved it when I would see that written in something, whether it was Sid or some other spiritual teacher, when someone would say, just be, I would find myself, oh yeah, just be. Deep breath, just be. And this last fall, I just saw that even more deeply. That for me, and where I'm at in my life right now, that I needed to just be for a while, just be. And it's like you get to, in a way, observe when we have more insight that what's going on is what's passing through our mind, which is this gift of thought being used, however we're using it, and thus experiencing it, because consciousness gives us the experience of whatever thought is passing through our mind. And it's like, as I really settled into that space more, I could see how my thoughts wanted to put pressure, you might say, on me to be or do something. And I was in a different. Did you hear that
You're back.
phone? I'm back. Yeah, my my phone went off. I probably should have turned it off totally, but oh well. But yeah, it's so simple and powerful and ordinary and extraordinary all at the same time. All at the same time. Yeah. It's just who we are, what life is. That's what Sydney Banks realized. And the suffering that we might say, inflict on ourselves and each other, so to speak, right? It's not right or wrong. To me, that is another beautiful thing about truth and these principles is that there is no right or wrong. It's just what we see at the time is always what any of us is up to from the inside out, from the inside out. And taking the judgments off ourselves, like some of us, like mine, tend to be more getting hard on myself. I'm a strong muscle for that. And so as that's changing more and more, it's left me with less on my mind in general, and more aware when it pops up. And so back to mindfulness. I just stray around here. To me, mindfulness is home. It's home in this world. In this world. It's like it is like a space that's the bridge. Our soul is the bridge to me between the formless and the form, and carries the knowledge of who and what we really are and what life is. And as we understand more insightfully again, it's beyond the intellect. It will always be beyond the intellect. It will inform the intellect, which means it will help clear up the misunderstandings that we carry through time via thought in our intellect, and leaves our mind with more airing out. The channel is more clear with less on it. And for me, I'm just finding myself more and more trusting that channel, I guess would be the, trusting. It's like a clearing of the soul, so to speak, so that wisdom, truth, the consciousness of who and what we are flows freely, so to speak, through us into our life, into the moment. So, I've said this, I've heard this, but I have much deeper sense of it. All we have to do in life is just show up. Just show up. And the clearer our channel is, the more enjoyable, so to speak, interesting, curious, energizing, could be any of those. That intelligence of mind, or who and what we are, uncontaminated, so to speak. Sid used to use that word, contaminated. But to me, again, mindfulness is an uncontaminated mind. Maybe that's another way of saying it. Yeah. What doesn't need to be on it isn't on it. I said that to a client the other day. I said, so she has a lot of physical issues going on and very unstable on her feet. And she worries a lot about it because they don't exactly know why that's happening. And so I said to her the other day, I said, we don't need to think about what we don't need to think about until we need to think about it. We don't need to think about what we don't need to think about until we need to think about it. And she got it. She was like, oh. I said, yeah. When you get up, you need to be mindful of stepping down. And she has a walker, one of those where you can sit. I said, you need to be mindful at those times. You need to give thoughts, so to speak. But other than that, resting in your bed or whatever, it doesn't really need to be on your mind. She says, oh, so I don't have to think about what I can't do anything about. I said, yeah. Until maybe common sense says you do. I don't know. Right? It's so simple. So simple. And I feel like this gal that I saw from Boston talking about self-compassion, self-calming, touching ourselves, or, hand on the heart. So close. So close. And nothing wrong with that. I've certainly done that. Like, right? But so natural. at the same time.
Yeah, I like that word, natural.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's, listening to these different presentations, that's what I just walked away with. It's like, they're so close and it's so natural.
I think because it's so natural, I feel like my whole life I've been surrounded by meditation teachers.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Whole life have been surrounded by meditation teachers. I mean, I had a Buddhist monk meditation teacher for 20 years, and I was practicing Vipassana meditation 4 hours a day. I had that kind of meditation teacher. When I became a psychologist, many of my clients were my meditation teachers. Meditation is resting in a relaxed, alert state of mind. That's why it's natural. That's why it's natural. When my kids were born and I held them, they became meditation teachers because they were certainly in a relaxed, alert, wide open state of mind. Tibetan Buddhists often call the meditative state newborn consciousness. Newborns are free of concepts because they haven't developed concepts yet, so they're not getting caught up in ideas and beliefs like some of us were. Newborn consciousness. So we all come into the world. We have many years of being natural meditators. Some people call it our default setting when we fall out of our personal thinking in the sense of not paying attention to it. There's nothing there but this natural meditative state. It's always there. Then I had other meditation teachers I want to tell you about. So I've had people who have been practicing meditators their whole life be my teachers, any number of those. I've had babies remind me most directly of our natural state, and it's had a big impact on me. Then I became a psychologist, and I had many, many clients who taught me way more than I knew about natural meditative state. I worked with a 7-year-old boy. His mom was concerned because he enjoyed being with adults more than kids, and she just wanted to know if he was okay. I said, I'd be glad to meet. She actually said, could I test him? And I said, no. I'll meet with your son, and I'll give you my professional opinion. Right? And this little 7-year-old boy walks into my office, and oh my God, his presence. And he walks right up to me and looks at me and goes, oh, hi, you must be Dicken. And I said, yes, I am. He goes, how are you doing? Now, he wasn't just saying, how you doing? He's going, how are you doing? I sit back and reflect on how I'm doing, and I share that with him. And pretty soon he's asking me all these questions about my life and what I like doing. But his presence was my teacher. If it's natural, it's often called presence, right? Our kids can be our greatest teachers. So I talked to this little boy. I said, I can't wait to see how he responds to the principles. And I started talking to him about how we all think and we experience what we're thinking. And after he listened very deeply, Sid Banks used listening as a metaphor for natural meditative state, because you can't think and listen at the same time. You have to disengage from your thinking. When you deeply listen, that's a meditative state. Listening has been used as a metaphor for centuries for the meditative state. True listening. Not the kind of listening I used to do while I was thinking the whole time somebody was talking, but true listening is just presence. True presence. And this little boy said to me, Dicken, I know what you mean. I said, oh, tell me. He said, sometimes when I'm stirred up and don't know what to do with myself, he says, sometimes I lay down in my bed and it's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep. Do you know what I mean? Listen, I had been meditating for many, many years, 4 hours a day, and that was one of the best pointing out instructions I had ever come across. It's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep. Sid Banks says you have to go beyond all concepts. At any moment, we step beyond our intellect, beyond concepts just for a moment. We're stepping into this quiet space, pure consciousness. This little boy is teaching me that through his direct knowing. He's saying, it's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't go to sleep. I asked him if he could say anything more about that, and he says, well, it's like I'm going to sleep, but I don't. And always then, I start to feel better. And when I feel better, I know just what to do. So Sid Banks says, in the quiet of our minds, there's a feeling, and in that feeling, there's an intelligence that's a knowing that's before the intellect. People get deeply into the now in a meditative state, which happens sometimes while we're driving a car, and then you just know what to do. You're making life and death decisions constantly without having to think about it with your intellect. Your kids are screaming and crying. If we step into this inner space of presence, there's a different quality in that space. Mindfulness is full of presence. That's all it means. It's full of presence. Eckhart Tolle doesn't like it because it makes it sound like your mind is full of ideas. Mindful is actually emptiness. It's not that kind of full. Now listen, I've had a lot of other teachers now that I know about. Pure consciousness is within every living being. So some of the best meditation teachers are a dog. I had a golden retriever that could beat anybody in terms of meditation. Pure presence. And in that comes an unconditional feeling that has no word for it, no labels. It says the feeling that's there in pure presence, there actually is no word for in the English language or in any language, because you're not in your conceptual mind to label it. Other than we all recognize it as just a nice feeling, this feeling of being at ease with what is in the moment as it is. No matter what you're feeling, there's no resistance, there's no judgment, there's no struggle. There's just presence to anything, to what arises in the moment. In Buddhist teaching, because that's where I had most of my formal training in meditation, they make a difference between conditional mindfulness, which is you have to do things first before you get to it. And then there's unconditional mindfulness, which is another teaching in Buddhism that says you already have it, and trying to do it is trying, and trying is thinking that creates some degree of stress or tension. So when we let go of everything we're thinking, our natural mindfulness reveals itself to us. And it's not a doing, it's not a trying, it's not an efforting. I love how Rita says it's a thought away. I worked with a woman who was psychotic and having an episode, and you know the phrase bouncing off the walls? Well, she was literally bouncing off the walls in my office. And I said, she came over to me and I said, would you listen to me for one moment, please? And she sat down and said, yes. And immediately just stepped into this space of wide open presence. Now, she didn't understand the nature of that and how that's what she's looking for, and that's where all the magic happens, and that it's our natural state and it can't be damaged or hurt or destroyed. And it's always there because there's nowhere to go to get it. But she had insight as we went along that was true. So I thought I'd say just a couple of things. Sid Banks used to say, as your understanding of the principles deeper, it makes you a natural meditator. It brings you to the meditative state without you doing it or trying to get there. And I want to explain my understanding of how that happened to me, how that happens to my clients, how that happens for people that I know is they have insight into the nature of the principles, how it's so natural that we miss it all the time. We don't recognize it. So first of all, let me just talk about the principle of thought for a minute. That there's the energy of life itself is sometimes called the power of thought, and it creates every single experience we're having in any moment. That's where the power to create comes from. It's a formless energy. The power of thought creates everything I'm feeling, everything anybody is feeling. Every single feeling is created from the power of thought. Now, one of the things I noticed right away, this was in the very first training I had in the principles. I was in a hotel room and I started thinking about something that was going to happen a week later. And I got more and more anxious as I was thinking about it. And before I learned the principles, if you ask why I was anxious, I was saying, because I have a problem. I got an issue. I got this thing out there. That's why I'm anxious. I got this thing and I'm thinking about that thing. It has to do with the outside. And in my very first training, people were saying, no, that it actually doesn't work that way. That's not scientific. You're experiencing your own thinking that's being created in each moment. So if you're feeling anxious, it's just because you're caught up in anxious thinking. And for the very first time in my life, I recognized that it was thought creating my tension. And you know what happened? It's what Sid promised would happen if you really see thought. He said, I'll bring you right back to the now. In other words, as soon as you see that it's your own thinking creating this uncomfortable feeling, it's built into us to let go of what we know is hurting us, is making us uncomfortable, is creating our suffering. thought recognition brings you back to the now over and over and over again. It allows you to let go of not some of your thinking, but to let go of all of your thinking for the moment. Because it's only in the now we can experience our natural meditative state. You can't think your way to it. No one can. It's impossible. So as I learned the principles, the first thing that helped me was that I'm a thinker, and that whatever I'm thinking is creating my tension, stress, and upset. And any moment that I recognize, oh, that feeling is just my thinking, I'd let go of everything I was thinking. And you know what would happen every time anybody comes to the now? All those thoughts that were stirred up, as the Buddhists say, liberate themselves. You don't have to do anything about them. They fall away. The metaphor that I've used since I first learned the principles, I was in Alaska working with a company, and I went in a store and saw a snow globe and was shaking it, and I said, oh my God, that's like our minds. And I bought the snow globe and went into the company and was at some point in talking to people saying, listen, it's normal for us to get caught up in our thinking. That's where our tension, stress, and upset comes from. And trying to quiet it down keeps shaking the snow globe. Trying is more thinking, trying to stop or fix or change or improve your thinking. When you come back to the now, that's like setting the snow globe down. When you set it down, you don't have to worry about your thoughts. You don't have to try and quiet down your mind. You don't have to try and stop yourself from thinking. It just naturally settles, clears, liberates itself, as the Buddhists say. So I started seeing, thank God I feel stress. It invites me to set the jar down. It reminds me that I'm just caught up in my thinking in a way that's keeping this tension, stress, and upset alive. And I set the jar down. Now, isn't it curious that most adults, when they're having difficulties, think harder about their life and their situations and themselves instead of setting the jar down? That's the benefit, in my mind, of really beginning to see that it's thought creating your feelings. You start setting down all kinds of thinking. Now, here's something else that I see happen for people. When you start having less thinking that burdens you, instead of worrying about something for an hour, I started worrying for only 10 minutes. I was setting down 50 minutes of burden. That's a lot. I tell you, at the end of the day, it's a big difference how many thoughts you're carrying that weigh on you, right? So the second thing I started to learn as I learned about the principle of thought is when I was in the now, I wasn't paying any attention to thinking. Because if I did, I'd leave the now. So I started to learn I can ignore any thinking I have at any moment. I remember one time Sid Banks coming up to me when I was really upset, and he goes, Dicken, don't you know that when you're upset, you can just ignore everything you're thinking? Now, I had been a meditator for ages, and I'd been a psychologist for 10 years. I had never heard anybody say, don't you know, you can completely ignore everything you're thinking. That's the second thing I started to recognize. In mindfulness, they call this cognitive diffusion or cognitive disidentification. They say that more than being aware of something, more than accepting it, cognitive disidentification. I'm not my thinking. I'm having thoughts, but I'm not my thinking. The more we begin to feel like we're stepping back from our thinking and there's distance between us and our thinking, and it's blabbing away, but when we're in the now, we're not paying attention to it. It's natural. Anybody who's in the now is ignoring their thinking while they're in the now. It's just helpful to realize the truth of that. And then I learned just because I have thinking, if I'm ignoring it, doesn't mean I have to act on it. So I'd get really upset with my kids and I'd go, oh, it's just thought. And I'd fall away from it. I'd fall back from that thinking into the now. And I wouldn't have to act on that angry thought just because I had it. You know, if you've listened to Mara Gleason talking about her work with teenagers in the ghetto of Chicago, most of which have been in and out of gangs, one of the most powerful things those kids have learned is just because I have a thought, especially an angry thought, doesn't mean I have to act on it. That's powerful. It's really powerful. It's a huge jump in well-being when we don't act on our low mood thinking or upset thinking. This was something that Sid says, any human being, if you begin to realize thought creates your experience, you will learn these lessons, not through practice, but through insights. And I've seen that happen over and over again. When I first learned the principles, I was teaching a meditation class, and then with my clients, I was teaching them the principles. In my meditation class, people were meditating 20 minutes a day, twice a day. And they were finding benefit. They were calming down. They were beginning to experience a little more presence in their life. But what I noticed was that my clients not only were calming down, being present, but during the day when they weren't meditating, they were walking around more of the time in a meditative state. Why was that? They were dropping thought all day long. Their feelings became friendly. Their tension, stress, and upset, their problems, their difficulties became invitations to close the laptop of their intellectual thinking and come back to the now. And in the now, there is no, as Eckhart Tolle talks about quite a bit, in the now, there is no problem. There is no difficulty. And that in that pure presence, there's a different feeling quality and a different knowingness. We know how to deal with stuff. We don't avoid dealing with stuff. We know how to deal with stuff. Now, that was just learning about the principle of thought and then the principle of consciousness, that there's this always present awareness that's our true nature, that's always, we're born into it. We dive back into it, where there's just this infinite, vast field of awareness. And that when we fall out of our intellect, we become more awake, more aware. Our level of consciousness goes up. We become more aware in pure presence. It feels like when I'm caught up in my thinking, it's a very small world of whatever I'm thinking about. When I close the laptop, like we tell our kids to do often, get off your screen. Stop being so wedded to your video games. Close the laptop, look up, and that's what it feels. I look up, it's wide open. Now, when any human being is wide open and not holding thought, it's what Sid called pure consciousness. He called it awareness free of the influence or contamination of your conceptual mind. He says it's what every human being is looking for. Some people call it our soul. We drop out of our head into our soul, into our heart, into pure presence. Free of the influence of our thinking can be yapping away, but we're not paying attention to it. Now, the other thing that I learned from Sid Banks was that when any human being touches pure presence and rests there, this deeper intelligence of mind will start giving you gifts for free. Whatever you're feeling that was tense, the feeling reverses directions and begins to open up. So I can be really angry, but when I wake up to the now, that angry feeling is now just energy, and energy left naturally expands. You light a match, what happens to the light? It just travels to infinity, it expands, it radiates. Radiates. That's why some people call the mind the heart of the universe, not our personal heart. Is because in that space there's expansive feeling and energy. When a feeling expands, no matter what it is, it's pleasurable. It hit me like a ton of bricks one day, an insight. Every feeling is love in disguise. When we hold it as a concept, it stays contracted. When we ignore the concept, whatever we're feeling starts expanding immediately. In the Bible, they say, don't put the bushel basket over the lamp. You take the lamp of the limitations of your conceptual mind off of your experience, and that inner light will radiate and expand. It's a huge part of spiritual teaching. Consciousness, the metaphor for light as a metaphor for consciousness has been used for centuries. Go to the light, lighten up, be the light, become enlightened, right? The other part of this teaching is that when we're in the now and our feeling is radiating, there's a knowing, and there's a knowing built into that translates into just common sense for how to live your life, right? And that there's no end.
I think we need to unmute Diana. Is it? Someone's interfering with inadvertently, I can tell. Yeah.
Okay,
You see?
I got it.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I muted that thought.
There we go.
I got the all mute button on my mind.
You got the
too.
all.
I like that. One
I got
time,
the big button.
I got the big button. One, this will be the last thing I share, is that one time I had this insight. What would happen if all of the thinking in my mind, I had a little switch on my head and I could switch it from English to Chinese? And I don't understand Chinese. So it'd be like I could be thinking, oh, Dicken, you are so stupid. And it'd be zing dao zong dong. And I wouldn't be influenced by that thought. Well, that's what Sid taught. If you really see thought, you realize every thought is just thought, and none of it has meaning until you grab onto it and think it does. And when thought is free to flow without creating meaning, that's a natural meditative state. So then you'll see it all around you. You see dogs, cats. For me, trees are amazing meditation teachers. Flowers, birds are teaching me so much about presence and movement and responding from knowing rather than from the intellect. I don't have to know how to parent intellectually. When I drop out of my intellect, there's a deeper, it's the wisdom that knows how to create and operate universes that comes along and helps me deal with my kids. Let's see. Well, Rita and
just a quick thought I have is, as you were talking, and then open it up to
some questions here.
But as you're talking, the power of consciousness, I'm just seeing that deeper. Okay. And just a quick example, for me, a personal, I was going through a period, 2 or 3 months or so. I don't even, time is funny, right? But in the evening, I would get this heavy feeling, just this heavy feeling, almost like dread or something. I didn't really know what it was, right? And the way I just kind of, it's there. I don't know what it is. I'm going to bed. I'm in bed, and there's this feeling I'm having, and I know I'll drop off to sleep and it'll be gone in the morning, right? Now, I know it has to have something to do with whatever's on my mind, which is thought, my thought, conscious or unconscious, right? And but who knows why I just let it be for a while. It just was like I noticed, and then one day, I thought, what is that feeling? It's like curiosity. To me, curiosity puts us into a mindful space, an open space, right? So I saw, consciousness. I became conscious in a deeper way that, well, it has to have something to do with thought. I know that, the intellect, right? But I know from experience what I've seen, right? But I don't know. What is that? What is that? Okay. And I don't know, day, whatever, I just let it be. When I get curious about experience, whether it's mine or clients or whatever, okay, then my mind is open, the channel for new thought or insight or, and then it hit me. Then I saw it, right? I saw that. Now, some of you know, it doesn't matter, but my husband died suddenly a couple of years ago. It's almost 2 years, right? And what I saw, again, consciousness pointed out to me, so to speak, that I had, the feeling of home is my direction, home, inside, spiritual, true home, right? And without realizing I had done this, again, this is just all of us human beings are so innocently using the gift of thought and consciousness the best we see at any point in time, right? And very innocently, I had, without knowing it, attached my sense of home and comfort and security to my husband being there, especially in bed next to me, right? A certain comfort in that, certain at homeness. And what's so cool about seeing beyond what we've seen is it was like, oh, I haven't had that feeling since. Now, I don't know, maybe I will. I don't know. But I don't really care. Uh, I'm not afraid of my experience or my feelings. Okay.
Mm.
And so, but in that moment, I thought, I had no idea that I had, as they say, made that attachment to something in the world of form, which it can't be attached to per se, right? And, or come from, right? The source is always before thought, before consciousness in this life. Right? And, but I just, it was kind of like I wanted to call up everybody and say, it really does work that way. All you have to do is see. That is thought. Now, it helped me to have insight that it have something to do with my own mind and thought, this experience I was having over and over and over, right? But for some reason, I just kind of kept ignoring it in a way, just said, well, it'll be gone in the morning, until the moment came for me, so to speak, for any of us, that it was like, oh, wait a minute. No wonder I'm tripping over my shoes. I left the shoestring untied. It's just like, oh. And I think this is what Dicken is saying. When the light sheds, our mind won't hang on to what it knows isn't true. It's built into us. It's built into us. Because we can only have an experience in this world via thought and consciousness, which are the spiritual elements that mind has given us. It's a trinity of human experience: mind, thought, and consciousness. It's a spiritual trinity that brings us into the psychological experience of our life. And it's moment to moment, and we're always in the now. There's nothing else going on.
Rita, shall we see what questions people have at this point?
Yeah, let's go for that. Yeah.
We've just got 20 minutes, and my favorite part is really just interacting with people. So let's,
good. Yeah.
anybody who'd like to, let's just try it. We'll just unmute yourself, start talking, and whoever gets there first can go ahead.
Hi, Dicken.
Yeah, Yael, hi.
Hi, it's nice to see you, and Rita, and everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a question, but I just been on Pransky pro training for the last 4 days, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that gives us hope to see in a direction that hasn't been seen or even conscious. I didn't even know that that there is this way in life. And to kind of give us like this guided road to know that there's always something that can be unleashed, whenever is time for me, kind of falling into another space and just living life kind of not negative or positive. Like maybe you could talk a little about that. Like there's like that space that we sit in is not
neutrality.
It's not negative or positive. It's just a place, and life can be lived by there. It doesn't have to be happy and exciting all the time. It's just life.
That's right.
Yeah, neutrality.
It's not negative, it's not positive, because those are ideas, those are concepts. And it's just the difference between, I love thinking about things, and I love the intellect, and I love being able to have ideas and concepts create a sense of me and you and separation. And it's a playground that we can use, or as Sid would say, the intellect is a tool, and like any tool, we can use it wisely or unwisely. And thank God it's built into us that when we use the intellect unwisely, we start feeling tension, stress, or upset, and it invites us to close the laptop, which means you go beyond positive and negative thinking into a space that's just presence. Being, the experience of being is the most beautiful feeling, but like you said, it's not necessarily a real high or a real, it's just presence. It's just freedom. It's no resistance to life. It's being with what is as it is. It's a surrender and a release, which feels good. It's like when we get into bed at night and we're all tired and we go, ah. It's a feeling of rather than a high or low, or it's just the ease of the now, peace of mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hey, Dicken, I wanted to mostly just say hi.
I just saw you sitting there, Patrick, and my heart leapt out of my chest here. Oh man, good to see you.
Yeah, really good to see you. I like the snow globe analogy because
Mhm.
there's times when, maybe I'm listening to someone in my home, maybe I'm listening to someone at work or whatever, and there is the judgment,
Mhm.
voice going on, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, oh, that you don't really need to judge every second, right? You have this little leap of consciousness of maybe that's not necessary at this moment, and it, like you said, when you set down the globe, it's instantaneously or within seconds for me in my experience. It's like, oh, I could just be here and listen rather than
Yeah.
make up a story at the same time. So, but it's really, what's beautiful that we always talk about is how it's just such a natural thing,
Yeah.
nothing to beat myself up about, and don't have to hit myself with a 2x4 like, oh, I should be a certain way. It's just, well, that's just the way it rolls, and sometimes I'm present, and sometimes I'm not.
That's right. That's right.
It's just really nice to see you all, and Rita, good to see you as well again. I just want to say
Yes.
hi mostly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thanks, Patrick.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions, please?
Can I just say a huge thank you? It's Karen O'Connell here
Oh,
to Dicken and Rita.
top of the evening to you.
No, I know the laughing. I just love the laughing. I have to say, what a beautiful hour we spent. It's the first time I listened properly in a long time, so thank you. It's, hearing the difference between listening and, as Dicken says, real listening. It's wow. Thank you. I just wanted to say a huge thank you because it's been really nice to spend the last hour with you guys.
Where are you?
Great to see you.
I'm in Ireland.
Oh, in Ireland. I heard the accent. Yes, I love the accent. Yeah.
So
yeah.
thank you for the nice laughs and the lovely feelings.
Thank you.
Great. Who else?
Hi guys, I wanted to say hi.
Oh, Darla, hi.
Hi Dicken, hi Rita, long time.
Oh,
Hey, Darla, I haven't seen you forever,
Hi.
girl.
I
Are you in
know.
Portland?
I'm in Portland.
Oh my
So
gosh.
nice to see you both, and I needed this. I so needed just a reminder because I've got the wonderful gift right now of raising a very bright, sassy little girl. And what I got today, so many things you said, Rita, just really resonated with me about times when we have a certain feeling, and I go back to old habit of trying to figure out like where's that coming from? How do I fix it?
Yeah.
And this was just so nice to just be reminded that there's nothing to fix, and
That's great.
and I think it will help me also be mindful because my little one is always, I see her trying to figure things out, and what you guys are pointing to is a way of figuring things out that doesn't involve that grind.
yeah.
And and just the deep faith and listening to our own wisdom and relying on that, like knowing that that's enough, and that we don't have to be trying to puzzle and figure things out. And what was it you said, Rita, about you don't need to think about it until you need to think about it, something you said.
Right.
like sometime in the middle of the night last night, my mind was like working on something, and I was in that half sleep and half awake, and I remember having that thought and kind of saying to myself, what are you doing? Like, this is not the time for this. Like, this is the time to be sleeping. And then I fell back to sleep. So, you know, just having this understanding that there's nothing to fix, nothing to do. But we get so programmed through, you know, our lives that there's another way to figure it out by, like, you know, working so hard. So thank you for the reminder. I really needed that. I love you both so much, and so nice to see you.
Yes.
Love
And
you.
what you said, Darla, that we're in the middle of the night. That's the worst thing. Time typically is, isn't it? Right? Me too. Right. But then that moment that we see what we're doing, so to speak, that's unnecessary, and that is thought. It's just that seeing. Our mind won't hang on to what it has seen as unnecessary or wrong timing or whatever we see, but we see that is thought without thinking that is thought.
Yeah. Thanks, Darla.
Hi,
Yeah.
my name is,
Hi.
hi, I'm Lisa. I actually have not met either of you before, and I appreciate this opportunity to be with both of you. It's been just pure joy and bliss. I know, Dicken, you've met my husband, Bill.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
one of the things I just wanted to say I really appreciated about this call was the conversation about presence, because there's something in that I think this is just my take on it in this moment was, you know, when I first learned about the principles and really relaxed into it, there was just a presence that I felt, and people seemed to be very curious and wanting to, you know, I'm a coach. I've been a coach for 25 years, but I've only known about the principles for about 2 or 3. But it was like people were just coming, and over the last few months, it seems like, at least how it occurs to me in this moment, is I've been so much into trying to figure out how to talk about it, like, and the presence got, I think, lost in it, and I was doing it versus just remembering that, you know, living it, if that makes any sense. So I just really appreciate, I could cry right now, just sort of present to the presence of it. And yeah, so I guess that's it. That's what I wanted to say.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can always come home.
Yeah, come home. Presence is such a nice word, isn't it? It's better to me, presence I like better than present moment even, because Sid says when you drop out of concepts, there is no concept of past, present, or future. So he says you step into the now, but he says the now is not in time, it's before concepts of time. Past, present, and future give us a sense of time. So it's the eternal now or the timeless now. And that's the power of presence, is we begin to sense more and more when we're resting in this vastness that there's no boundaries, it's spacious, it's accepting of everything because it includes everything. This is another part that I wanted to mention, is that when we disidentify from our personal thinking as who we are, we start to sense more who we are is this vast, wise, aware, creative presence. That the experience of presence is a feeling of being more intimately connected to everything. So the experience of presence, you could say, is love, the feeling of intimacy or connection with everything. So Sid would say it's a different kind of love that gets discovered through realization. It's not a personal love based around concepts of I love you and I need you and it's me and you and you have to be a certain way so I can keep loving you. That's conditional love. You fall into this space of wide open presence. The feeling there is inclusive and intimate. So Sid says it's a different kind of love. You fall in love with the whole world.
Mhm.
You literally, when I drop in out of concept into the space of pure presence, I feel closer to the trees, to my wife, to people that are on TV yelling and arguing at each other. There's just, the reason for that is we're not caught up in our concepts of judgments, of shoulds, right? That freedom lies one step beyond our conceptual mind. Freedom from the limitations of our conceptual mind, the labeling, the distortions. Presence, beautiful word. Lisa, glad that's resonating with you. Waking up to the fact of thought brings us home to our natural presence of just being in a wide open, inclusive way, free of judgments. That's the Christian teaching of forgiveness, is we drop out of the world where every thought is a judgment, a limitation. And free of judgments, there's love. Sid says you can't talk about love unless you talk about forgiveness. Freedom from the limitation of thought taken to be true, taken personally. So presence is a powerful thing. Everybody in the world is looking for that space because everybody who wakes up in that space experiences peace, connection, possibility, openness, curiousness, like you talked about, Rita, is beautiful.
Dicken and Rita, just wanted
Yes.
for a lovely, just a lovely, light but deep
Mhm.
conversation, really, and it's been beautiful, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's just wonderful hearing that sense of certainty, really, from both of you. It's in your eyes. It's beyond your words. It's in your eyes. That certainty, and I think it's that touches people and connects with people, isn't it? And
It's like a channel, isn't it?
Yeah. And it seems to me that the two words that jump out for me really is one is that there's trust, and trust that there is this system of how that runs us and is running the show for us. And at the same time, there's acceptance that, stuff that comes along, we can just be accepting of that. Dicken and I have had quite a few conversations along that line. Some of the issues that I've bumped into along the way is where I've really not wanted to be accepting of whatever I'm finding myself in.
Yeah.
When you were explaining about that time in the evening and how you, in a way, you stayed with it, or it stayed with you, but you didn't do anything with it. Because I know that the times I've got myself into the deepest water is when I want to be doing something about it. I've got to fix it. I've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for both of you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, both.
Hi.
Hi, I'm actually Rachel, and I've had 2 kids fall asleep on this this call, so you'll have to forgive me.
I saw the airplane. I saw the airplane flying in and out. So it's like, the airplane went into the hangar, I guess.
Yeah, definitely in a moment with his Lego. For me, I guess because I'm new to the principles, I'm spotting this a lot, and it might be a while for you to, because you knew Sid, so that adds a couple of decades to your knowledge to mine. But I'm noticing how I was already 3 principles before I learned the 3 principles. So where I've been accepting of a friend's child who's got ADHD and completely trusting her to look after my son at the same time after her son, even though her son would be throwing hammers around the room. And I'd never felt like I was putting my son in a dangerous position or judgmental towards her little 4 or 5-year-old that was in this major, like, for them it was a massive moment, and for me it was, you obviously love your son, and if you can love your son that much, then I feel safe leaving my son with you. And to me it's like these moments of past acceptance and unconditional love of other people have always been throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm understanding it as 3 principles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always been true. Yeah, it's always been true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you also went through that sort of recognition period of, that's what it was. That's why
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
why I understand this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's like finding the fine tuning that was behind the scenes all the time. Yeah.
I guess understanding the language that's been spoken for years, maybe.
Yeah, it's beyond the language, isn't it? Yeah. It's a feeling, like you've known things. Me too. I recognized the first time I heard Sid, I was reminded of when I had felt what I would call the presence of God. Okay. Through my life at different times, right? So we always have been and always will be who and what we really are, which is spiritual, right? And we're just getting out of the way of it as we understand how our mind works moment to moment more, is how I see it. It's like there's a natural vacuum. Insight and understanding is like a cleaning up. Right. And there's no end to that.
Thank you.
Well, we've come to the end of our time.
Yeah.
Rita, thank you. It's been a delight to do this with you.
You too, Dicken. Really.
And so good to see so many familiar faces and good to meet some new friends.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Rita, how do people get in touch with you? I'm not taking individual clients now, but I know you are. How would people get?
Yeah, I'm just kind of getting back into stuff. So yeah, I'm available. And I love having conversations with people, definitely. So you can contact me by email, which is rjshuford, SHUFORD, @gmail.com. Or you can reach me by phone, which is 808-375-8747. Either way, text, phone, email.
Yeah. I've recorded this. So I will upload this onto YouTube and then make the link available on Facebook. If anybody wants to either listen again or let a friend know that if they're interested, they can listen.
Mhm.
What a delight to see everybody. Thank you all for coming. Hope to run into you all very soon.
Yes. Aloha.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks very
yes.
much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. That was delightful.
Oh, great.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.